The United States Senate. He's running to replace Lindsey Graham. Mr. Richard Cash.
All right, let's have a little audience participation to begin with. How many of y'all believe that Lindsey Graham should be replaced? Yeah. How many of y'all believe that Lindsey Graham can be replaced? All right, some of y'all have missed two chances. This is the final one. How many of y'all believe Lindsey Graham must be replaced? We've got a little over 6 weeks to get that done until the election, and then I believe there is going to be a 2-week runoff period. In the paper this past week, I noticed a new poll, and it said of registered voters, Lindsey Graham's approval rating is only 40%. Among registered voters, his disapproval rating is right now at 44%. And just so everybody knows, South Carolina is a runoff state. There are 6 challengers to Lindsey Graham. If he gets the most vote on June the 10th, he does not win unless he gets at least 50% of the vote. If he fails to get 50%, then there's a 2-week runoff period with him and whoever has the second most votes. There is a path to defeating Lindsey Graham, and I want to follow that path with you for just a minute, because you have to believe it if you're going to get involved the way we need you to be involved in these next 6 weeks. If you follow this race at all, you know that Lindsey Graham has about $7 million on hand. And folks, this is after he's probably spent $1 million or $2 million. Let me say a few things about that. First of all, the second biggest donor state to Lindsey Graham is the state of California. The third biggest donor state to Lindsey Graham is the state of New York. Now, I've thought about this. How can this be? I mean, is the map mixed up? I thought South Carolina was here and California is on the other side of the country. South Carolina's here and New York's up at the top. And what I finally concluded was this, folks: those poor people are confused. They think Lindsey Graham's one of their senators because that's the way he votes. I want to tell you, there's lots of other people in this country who contact the campaign and contact us here. And some of them really want to know what's wrong with South Carolina that we would send Lindsey Graham to the United States Senate. Here's what I believe can happen and must happen to defeat Graham. Right now his approval rating's at 40%. If he gets 40% of the vote on June the 10th, friends, he's going to be in a lot of trouble, because he's the most well-funded, one of the most well-known and powerful senators in the entire nation, and he's been there 20 years and he can't even get 50% of a vote against a field of people who are basically no-names. What's going to happen on June the 11th if Lindsey Graham's at 40% is this: people just like y'all all over the country are going to send donations online to whoever's in second place. And furthermore, some of these big groups like Club for Growth that want to get rid of Lindsey Graham, folks, they have the ability to direct $500,000 or $1 million here within a few days. If Lindsey Graham's forced into a runoff, there's going to be money come into this state from all over the country to defeat him, and whoever's in that runoff will have the funding they need to run a very competitive runoff race. Your job and my job in the next 6 weeks is this: make sure that on June the 10th, he's down in the low 40s. Because if he is considered vulnerable, the resources are going to come and help us to get rid of Lindsey Graham 2 weeks later on June the 24th. Now I want to say a few things to you along the lines of how I started out. Why should Lindsey Graham be replaced? 2 things I've talked about for over a year, because I started this race on April 15th of 2013, is this: the number one reason Lindsey Graham should be replaced is because he voted for both of the Supreme Court nominees that Barack Obama put up for the Supreme Court. You may not know it, but Lindsey Graham was the only Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee to cast a vote in favor of Sonia Sotomayor. I was outraged, as many of y'all were, and we made that known to him. And 1 year later, Lindsey Graham was the only Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee to cast a vote for Elena Kagan. Lindsey Graham has not apologized. What he has basically said is he's going to keep doing the same thing. If President Obama sends up another nominee, he's going to vote for that one. If Hillary Clinton gets elected, God help us, in 2016, he's going to vote for her nominees. Folks, we can't afford that. Both of these nominees are judicial activists, meaning they like to make the law themselves. And they had proven track records as judicial activists, and there's simply no excuse that's acceptable in South Carolina for Lindsey Graham voting for these justices. They're going to be making law from that court for the next 20 or 30 years. If Lindsey Graham had voted correctly in every other instance, he should be fired for those 2 votes alone. Do you agree? But you know as well as I do that he hasn't voted correctly in every other instance. In 2007, we had an immigration reform bill come up that Lindsey Graham was the chief proponent of, so much so that it actually became known by his name. It was called Gramnesty, a pathway to citizenship for those who have broken the laws of our nation to come here. South Carolina made it loud and clear to Senator Graham, we do not favor that and we do not want that. Well, he's back with the same program. Folks, nothing's changed. The same principles that held true in 2007 hold true today. A pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants, those who have broken the law to come here, simply will undermine the rule of law in America, and it will incentivize the next wave of illegal immigrants, and we cannot afford that. Do y'all agree?